He was 2 minutes late. 2 minutes. That was all it took to vanish into the machinery of a system built more for statistics than for justice. The courtroom clock read 9:02 a.m. when Marcus Tillman pushed through the heavy wooden doors. His breath, ragged, shirt half untucked, the clasp on his watch hanging limp like a broken promise. It would be the last time Marcus walked into a courtroom as a free man. Outside, a spring rain drizzled down the courthouse steps. Inside, the air was thick with fluorescent light and the quiet hum of bureaucracy. No one looked up as he entered, except the public defender flipping through a stack of files, scanning names like a tired librarian. She found his. Marcus Tillman, you're here for arraignment on a robbery charge. I'm Claire. I'm your attorney, for now. Marcus blinked, the words not fitting together. Robbery. I think there's been a mistake. I just got here. Claire didn't look up. That's what they all say. Sit tight. You'll be called. Marcus turned slowly, confusion weighing down his limbs. He found a seat, surrounded by strangers. In ill-fitting suits, mothers with folded hands, men in shackles. His breath came shallow. He had never been inside a courtroom before. Until 72 hours ago, Marcus Tillman was just a guy with a job at a mechanic's shop and an old cat named Dusty. He played chess at the park on Sundays, brought his mom groceries every Thursday, and minded his own business. He had no record, not even a parking ticket. But now, his name was on a charge sheet. 2 nights before, a liquor store in Southbridge had been robbed. The clerk was pistol-whipped. Cash and scratch. Tickets stolen. The assailant wore a ski mask, but a witness across the street had seen a young black man in a gray hoodie running toward a dark sedan. It wasn't much. It didn't have to be. Marcus owned a gray hoodie. He owned a car. He lived 6 blocks from the store. That was enough. The police had picked him up at his apartment just past midnight. No explanation. Just banging on the door, floodlights and shouts. He was handcuffed before he could grab his wallet. He thought it was a mistake. He kept waiting for someone to realize it. But when the judge read out the charges, armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, Marcus's stomach bottomed out. Claire whispered instructions he didn't hear. Something about not pleading guilty yet. Bail denied. Flight risk. The gavel dropped. Time turned liquid. He barely remembered the ride to the jail, the intake questions, the cold metal bench, the clink of bars closing, the smell of bleach and despair. He didn't remember sleeping. Back in the neighborhood, his mother left a voicemail. "Call me, baby. I'm worried." The police report said the witness had seen him. But Marcus had been home, fixing the busted radiator in his car. His neighbor Ramon had lent him a wrench. They talked about the Celtics game. But no one asked Ramon. The cops said he matched the description. But the description was barely more than a silhouette. The worst part wasn't the accusation. It was how quickly the world accepted it. As if something inside the air had shifted when the handcuffs clicked shut. As if Marcus had become someone else. And no one bothered to ask who he'd been before. And now he sat in a cell, trying to remember what it felt like to be believed. The county jail at Southbridge had the personality of a basement. Dim, concrete, and leaking the stink of old sweat and older secrets. Marcus sat on the bottom bunk of cell 4C, staring at the green paint peeling off the cinder block wall. Above, a kid named Jalen snored into a thin mattress that smelled of bleach and defeat. Marcus didn't know how long he'd been awake. He barely slept. The clatter of keys, the echo of shoes, the screams in the night. Time didn't flow here. It dripped like a faucet you couldn't fix. On the 3rd day, Claire came to see him. She didn't bring much, just a yellow legal pad, and tired eyes. "The DA is offering you 5 years. Plead guilty. Serve 3, maybe. I've seen worse deals." Marcus almost laughed. "I didn't do anything. Why would I plead guilty?" Claire sighed. "Because if this goes to trial and you lose, you're looking at 20. Maybe more. They say you had a weapon." "I didn't." She looked at him, really looked this time. Saw the bags under his eyes, the tremble in his fingers. She leaned in. "Do you have someone who can place you at home during the robbery? An alibi?" "Ramon." My neighbor. He was with me, but nobody's asked him anything. Claire made a note. I'll try to find him. But she didn't sound convinced. Meanwhile, the trapdoor was already opening beneath Marcus. The police had a shaky eyewitness, a hoodie, and a face they wanted to fit to a crime. They put together a photo lineup. 6 pictures. Marcus's DMV photo sat dead center. The witness picked him. It should have ended there. Lineups are supposed to be double-blind. The officer showing the photos isn't supposed to know who the suspect is. It's meant to reduce suggestion, prevent nudges. But Officer Halstead had circled Marcus's photo with his finger. Look closely at this one, he'd said. Marcus would never know that part. It was buried in the file Claire hadn't yet seen, a line of misconduct camouflaged in routine paperwork. The cops also claimed they found a scratch ticket in Marcus's car. It was planted. He didn't even play. But the evidence lined up like soldiers: witness ID, item from the scene, proximity to the crime. The jury wouldn't need much more. And then came the kicker. A surveillance still. Grainy, low res. A man in a mask pointing a gun. You couldn't see the face. But the build, the hoodie. The detective nodded. Looks about right. Marcus felt his world unravel thread by thread, from a charge sheet to a plea deal to a mugshot to a trial. The conveyor belt of the justice system was speeding up, and he was bound to it, hands tied, voice muted by disbelief. One night back in his cell, Jalen looked down from the top bunk. "You one of the real ones?" he asked. Marcus didn't answer, not because he didn't know, but because it didn't matter. Not here. The jail had a way of making noise feel like silence. It was never quiet, not really. There was always some clang, some shout, the thud of boots or the shrill buzz of a faulty intercom. But inside Marcus's mind, everything had gone still. Dumb. He marked time and meal times and shift changes. Breakfast meant gray eggs and watery coffee. Lunch was bologna that sweated on white bread. Dinner tasted like punishment. He kept to himself, head down, counting tile cracks and ceiling stains like prayers. At night he thought about Dusty, his cat, probably curled up by the radiator waiting for him. He wondered if anyone had fed her. Then he'd think about Ramon. Maybe Claire had found him. Maybe Ramon had told the truth and maybe someone had actually listened. But hope in jail was a dangerous thing. It made the floor drop out harder each time. One morning, a guard called his name. "Tillman, attorney visit." Claire was waiting in the tiny concrete interview room, bags even deeper under her eyes. She sat with a file in her lap, fidgeting. "Found Ramon," she said before he could ask. Marcus felt something stir. Not relief, not yet, just the memory of it. "He says you were with him all night, working on your car. He even had a selfie with you from that evening. Time-stamped. I'm filing a motion." "You believe me now?" Marcus asked. Claire paused. "I believed you before. I just couldn't prove it." She opened the file. There's more. Officer Halstead's body cam was accidentally left on during the lineup. I haven't seen the footage yet, but an intern at my office flagged the transcript. Halstead coached the witness. Said your name before the guy even picked a photo. Marcus didn't speak. He couldn't. His throat swelled with something like rage or gratitude, or both. Claire leaned forward. "If this lines up, we can challenge the ID. Maybe the whole case falls apart." But Marcus had learned not to count blessings. Back in the cell, he lay on his bunk while Jalen watched TV on mute. "Law. Order again," Jalen said. "Cops solve everything in 42 minutes. Real life's messier." Marcus cracked a ghost of a smile. It was the first time in days. The first time Claire saw the footage, she swore under her breath. It was grainy, sure, but it was damning. Officer Halstead didn't just gesture. He full-on tapped Marcus's photo with the back of his pen. "That's the one I'd be looking at," he told the witness. And the witness, visibly confused, blinked at the row of photos before nodding slowly. Yeah, I guess that's him." Claire replayed it 3 times. Each time her jaw clenched tighter. She filed a motion the next morning to suppress the lineup identification. That same day, her intern, a law student named D, found something else. "Hey," D said, peeking into Claire's office. "You ever look at the chain of custody report for the scratch ticket?" Claire looked up. "Not closely, why?" The arresting officer logged the evidence 20 minutes before Marcus was even pulled over. Claire grabbed the file. The timestamp was clear. She checked the arrest log. The times didn't match, not even close, Jesus. They were building a case on evidence that hadn't existed until after it was supposedly discovered. Claire filed a second motion. By Friday, the prosecution was on defense. The assistant DA, a sharp-suited man named Trammell, tried to shrug it off as clerical error. "It's a minor discrepancy," he told the judge. But Claire wasn't having it. "This discrepancy suggests fabricated evidence. If the ticket wasn't logged when they said it was, then it could have come from anywhere. That undermines their entire timeline." The judge, a woman named Richter, raised an eyebrow. "And the body cam footage?" Trammell shifted. "Unfortunate, but not necessarily malicious," Claire pressed. "It shows the officer leading the witness to an identification. That's textbook suggestiveness. The ID should be inadmissible." Richter said she'd take it under advisement. Back at the jail, Marcus sat at the metal table in the rec room, a worn chessboard between him and Jalen. He hadn't heard the updates yet. He moved a pawn. Jalen blocked it. "You play like you got something to lose," Jalen said. Marcus looked at the pieces, then at the room around them, the peeling paint, the flickering light. "I do." That night, Claire finally visited. She told him everything. "It's not over," she said, "but it's moving. The judge is reviewing the motions. If they're granted, most of the case falls apart." Marcus stared at her. "So I just wait?" Claire nodded. "Yeah, but not forever." For the first time, Marcus let himself feel it, a thin, trembling line of hope stretching across the cold gray sky of his cell. Claire sat in the courtroom, her hands folded tightly around a pen she wasn't using. The hearing had started 10 minutes ago, but every second felt like it was stretching sideways. Judge Richter was parsing through the body cam transcript, her lips pursed like a woman who knew how badly she was about to be lobbied. The prosecution stood poised and defensive. Assistant DA Trammell kept insisting there was no malicious intent. But the evidence told a different story. Claire had laid it all out: timestamps, contradictions, camera footage, and the grossly tainted lineup. When she rose to speak, she did so with the calm of someone sitting on a coiled spring. "Your Honor, if Officer Halstead had simply made a procedural mistake, we might be talking about retraining. But what we're looking at here is a pattern. He didn't just suggest the photo. He anchored the entire case to it. Then the scratch ticket was logged before the arrest. The timeline doesn't match because the story doesn't match." She paused. Let the silence stretch. "My client has been incarcerated for nearly 3 months based on manipulated identification and evidence that was, at best, mishandled and at worst, manufactured. The integrity of this entire case is compromised." Richter held up a finger. "Ms. Durant, is it your position that the prosecution acted in bad faith?" Claire chose her words carefully. "Not the entire prosecution, but the arresting officer absolutely did. And any case built on that foundation cannot stand." The judge made no expression, just nodded, scribbled something, called for recess. Back at the jail, Marcus felt like the day was made of wet paper. He'd been here too long to believe in miracles. But when Claire arrived after court, her eyes told him what her words didn't need to. "We're going to trial, but the ID is out, and so is the ticket." His hands trembled. "So, that means, It means the DA has almost no case." 3 days later, the charges were dismissed. No fanfare, no press. Just a clerk handing a dismissal sheet to a stunned Marcus Tillman who didn't speak until the wind outside hit his face like sunlight through prison bars. Claire stood beside him. "You're free." Marcus didn't cry. Not then. He just nodded. Because there were no words big enough for what had almost happened. Freedom didn't feel like freedom. It felt like standing on the courthouse steps in the same gray hoodie he'd worn that night. breathing in air that didn't smell like bleach, while the world moved on like nothing had happened. Marcus Tillman was a free man, but he didn't know how to be one anymore. The sun felt wrong, too bright, the sky too big. Every sound made him twitch. Claire walked beside him, a duffel in her hand, his things returned in a plastic bag like groceries. She didn't say much. She knew enough to know this wasn't the end. Just another kind of beginning. "You need a ride?" she asked. Marcus shook his head. "I'll walk." She nodded. "You know how to reach me." He wanted to thank her, but he didn't have the words yet. So he just nodded back and walked. At his apartment, the lock stuck for a second and he panicked. For a moment, he saw uniforms in his memory. Flashlights, shouts, cold metal, but it was just the key. Inside, the apartment was stale. Dusty was alive, barely. The cat meowed once, weakly, then curled against his leg like no time had passed. The radiator was still broken. The groceries in the fridge were long gone. The lights flickered. He stood in the middle of the room, not sure where to sit, not sure if he was allowed to. News of his release didn't make headlines. There was no statement from the police department. Officer Halstead was placed on administrative leave. Paid. The district attorney's office opened an internal review. Nothing came of it. Claire filed a civil suit. Marcus was the plaintiff. Wrongful arrest, malicious prosecution, civil rights violations. They settled a year later. Marcus got $210,000. After legal fees, $147,000 hit his account. People said, "You must feel lucky." Marcus didn't feel lucky. He felt hollow. Sometimes he woke up on the floor, hands curled into fists, mouth dry from imagined screams. He couldn't work at the garage anymore. Couldn't be around loud clanging, oil smells, fluorescent lights. They reminded him of cell, doors and cafeteria trays. He tried therapy. It helped a little. But the scars weren't all inside. He'd been the guy who fixed things. Now he was the guy who'd been broken. One day, Claire called him. "I have a case. Kid named Malik, 18. Same DA, same precinct, same officer. You want in? You want me to testify? I want you to help make sure it doesn't happen again." Marcus didn't answer right away, but that week he sat in a courtroom, again, on purpose this time. He listened to a kid explain that he'd never even seen the alley where the robbery happened, and when the prosecutor pointed to a shaky photo, Marcus leaned in and said, "That's not proof. That's hope. Hope that the jury sees what you want them to see." The jury didn't convict. Malik walked free. Marcus walked out beside him. Years later, when people asked Marcus what happened, he never said, "I was wrongfully accused." He said, "They picked me," because that's what it was. Not a mistake, a choice. A system that rewards speed over certainty. A badge and a hunch and a body to fit the story. He never got an apology, but he got something better. A name cleared. A voice found. And the chance to keep someone else from going through what he did. Because the cost of innocence is high, but the price of silence is higher.